Grief is the price we pay. Written by Skiffy. Chapter 11. Van Hoover. When Spike next awoke, it was well after dawn, but still early morning. Feeling stiff from sleeping on the hard concrete floor, and as such taking the time to pop several of his joints, Spike nonetheless felt rested enough. Sitting up, he pulled the trench coat he had used as a blanket off of his legs and glanced around for Thorax. He saw that the changeling had removed the cloak he had been wearing finally, which had been left in a heap around the spot Thorax had spent the night at. But there was no immediate sign of his friend, and for a moment, Spike wondered if Thorax had for some reason left. Thankfully though, he soon spotted him sitting peacefully on top of a large old crate that sat against the warehouse's west wall, his back to Spike as he seemed to be gazing out the dusty windows that lined the upper two-thirds of the wall. The changeling's gossamer wings were spread but relaxed, shimmering in the light of the sun. Thorax seemed to be lost in thought. Curious, Spike wandered up to the base of the crate, which was much taller than he was. He assumed Thorax had flown up to get to the top of it. "Thorax?" he called out hesitantly. Thorax turned and looked at Spike.
Good morning,"
he greeted the little dragon.
"Did you get enough sleep?"
Spike rolled one of his shoulders, trying to work the stiff muscles loose again. "Yeah," he said simply. "You?" Thorax lowered his gaze slightly.
"Yeah."
Even though Spike was quite certain the changeling hadn't slept a shred more since his nightmare. Spike watched the changeling for a moment. "So, what are you doing up there?" he asked. Thorax replied by leaning down and reaching out a hoof with which to help Spike climb up himself. Once clambered atop of the box, Spike turned and peered out of the windows. "Wow," Spike whispered, enthralled by the sights before him. Thorax had wiped the dust from many of the panes of glass composing the window, giving them a clear view of the sprawling cityscape of Van Hoover, beautifully aglow in the glowing rays of the rising sun. Most of the city could be seen from here, including the city's iconic Pony's Gate Bridge, which Spike had previously only seen in pictures. Their view was unobstructed on the coast in the distance, where the city bordered the North Luna Ocean. Because it sat to the west, on the opposite side of the sunrise, the waters that stretched forth on to the horizon were tastefully cast part in the shadow and part sparkling in the early morning sunlight. It was this body of water that Thorax had his attention directed towards.
"I'd always heard of the oceans,"
he explained aloud, gazing out at the view.
"But I've never actually seen one before now."
"I've seen the Celestial Sea a couple times before," Spike spoke up. "This is the first time I've seen the North Luna Ocean, though."
"What does the Celestial Sea look like?"
"Pretty much the same as this, actually," Spike grinned. "Still a pretty sight, though." They continued gazing out at the view for another moment or so. Then Spike's gaze wandered down to the top of the crate they stood upon, and saw Thorax had also taken a large plank of wood and been marking it with a piece of sidewalk chalk that the changeling must have found lying around. Spike tilted his head at the symbols the changeling had drawn, appearing to be a series of circles and sideways eye shapes, but with occasional circular notches taken out of them. "What's this?" he asked Thorax. Thorax followed Spike's gaze.
"Oh, I was just passing the time making some notes, trying to figure out how likely some pony from the Crystal Empire might come chasing after us here," he explained, picking up the chalk with his magic again and proceeding to make a new mark on it. Spike stared at the symbols and realized what they were. You mean that's writing?" he asked, surprised. "Well, yeah, and a little bit of math, so it's more of a mix of letters and numbers,"
Thorax admitted. He pointed one hoof at one of the circular symbols.
"Letters."
He moved his hoof to one of the sideways eye shapes.
"Numbers."
"I don't recognize any of those, though."
"Well, unless you know Lingua Mutationis, I wouldn't expect you to."
Spike paused, glancing at Thorax. You saying this is all a sort of changeling language? The idea of such a thing existing surprised him, especially considering Thorax was clearly fluent in Equestrian. So much so, he had never stopped to think it might not be the changeling's native language. He heard Thorax chuckle, who understood Spike's thinking. I wasn't born speaking and writing Equestrian, you know. Changelings have our own language, just like a lot of other races. It's just when around ponies, Equestrian is the language you want to be using, obviously. Thorax made another mark while speaking. Changelings are actually pretty good with languages, so we generally know more than one on average. We have to. No good changing ourselves to look the part if we can't also speak the language. Spike shrugged to himself. It made sense. How many languages do you know then? Not as many as most other changelings, admittedly. In addition to my native language and Equestrian, I really only know Diamond Dog, Zebra, and a little bit of Breezy. I was set to start learning Saddle Arabian at one point, but then the whole invasion of Canterlot happened and... well, you know what happened after that. Thorax looked off into the distance wistfully for a moment, while Spike gaped at, to him, the impressive number of languages the changeling knew. He then glanced at the dragon. How many languages do you know? Spike twiddled his claws together sheepishly. Just Equestrian. I suppose I could teach you something else then, if you'd like, Thorax offered. Spike chuckled to himself. It'd be kind of ironic if I took you up on that, actually, he admitted. Twilight's always been trying to get me to learn a second language because she... He trailed off suddenly, as the memory of Twilight standing to one side, while permitting Spike to join Thorax in banishment, unexpectedly returned to the forefront of his attention. Recognizing this, Thorax cleared his throat and changed the subject. Anyway, I've been running the odds on any pony from the Crystal Empire tracking us here in Vancouver, specifically, and I'm finding it's actually not as big as we feared. He faced Spike. I mean, think about it. All they could know at this point is that we had your season train pass and that we boarded a train. Unless someone at the train station in the Crystal Empire spied on us boarding which train and was able to piece together that we might not be who we seemed, they aren't actually going to know which train we boarded. At least not with reliable certainty. And we know more than one train went through the Crystal Empire yesterday. There is the matter of the tracker Princess Celestia attempted to send you, but by the sounds of it, you destroyed it quickly enough that the spell almost certainly didn't get enough time to send a reliable signal back to her. Of course, as you pointed out last night, getting dinner on the train means that a bill will be sent to Twilight that will reveal that we were on the southbound train. But she's not going to get that bill right away, will she? Until then, they could only guess which train we might have boarded. Since we're technically banished, I'm inclined to think that they'd assume that we would head someplace out of Equestria rather than head deeper into it. When they do get the bill for that dinner, Thorax continued, that will give them an idea of some of the stops we might have gotten off at, which would include Vancouver. But keep in mind that we passed, I estimate, 5 other stops since getting that dinner on the train. And I estimate there were about a dozen more stations the train stopped at after Vancouver. Because for all they know, we could have kept riding that train well into dawn. That means they'll have to search a radius of about several hundred miles, with no surefire means of knowing which of those stops we actually stopped at, unless we've done something we haven't considered to cue them in. So, the way I see it, the changeling concluded, we have probably a day or so of safety we can spend in Vancouver, getting whatever we need to proceed before we really need to start worrying about the ponies coming here looking for us. And when they do arrive, it will most likely just be a small party coming to discreetly poke around for any clues. If we continue to keep a low profile like we've been doing, I think we've got a good chance of not ever getting found by them here. Spike glanced between Thorax and his written notes for a moment, regarding both with surprise. You really thought this out, he stated, impressed. Thorax fidgeted with his hooves sheepishly.
When you're a changeling, good risk assessment is an invaluable skill to have,
he explained simply. Okay, so we've got a few days at best to get our act together, Spike deduced. How do we want to use them?
Well, you said we should get as much supplies for a long journey as we feasibly can,
Thorax said, and pointed one hoof out at the cityscape outside of the warehouse windows.
So I was thinking I'd go out really quick in the skies and do a bit of scouting. See what might be the best places to get some of these things.
He glanced back at Spike.
What sort of things should we prioritize?
Food and water primarily, Spike responded immediately. He rubbed his chin for a moment. We will probably want some basic camping gear too. Light stuff we can carry easily. We should probably make a list, actually.
Tell you what then,
Thorax said, standing up, handing him his piece of chalk.
You stay here and put together the list while I go out scouting for places of potential interest to us for a couple of hours. When I get back, we can then work out how we want to proceed from there.
Spike accepted the piece of chalk. Sure, he said. But while you're out doing that, Thorax, he hesitated. Just be careful you don't get caught. Thorax put on the stallion disguise he had worn on the train ride here, but adjusted it slightly so that the stallion was now a unicorn and bore a different cutie mark featuring a pair of books. He gave his dragon friend a soft grin.
So long as you do the same.
Spike returned the grin. You bet I will. Grief is the price we pay. Written by Skiffy. Chapter 12. That we don't have. It had reached late morning by the time Thorax returned from his scouting trip. Until then, Spike had spent it uneventfully sitting on the warehouse floor with the rest of their scant gear, writing down a list of things they should try and obtain in order of priority on the back of the piece of wood Thorax had been doing risk assessment on. He was not disturbed the whole time, and found that, now that it was better lit with sunlight, the warehouse was a rather peaceful place to be, especially once he got used to the smell, which Spike realized he had at some point, but couldn't help but wonder if the smell might have rubbed off on either him or Thorax. To play it safe, he was sure to add "get baths" to the list, as he figured the two of them were going to need one soon. When Thorax returned, still disguised, he did so carrying a small neckerchief of cloth in his magic, full of small berries.
Here,
he said, handing them over to Spike.
Lantaculum.
Accepting the berries, Spike gave him a puzzled look. Beg your pardon?
It means breakfast,
Thorax explained as he dropped his disguise, reverting to his normal changeling form.
Since you showed interest, I thought I'd try teaching you a bit of lingua mutationis, the language of the changelings.
Oh, Spike said. How do you say thank you then? Thorax grinned.
Gracias tibiago.
Spike frowned as he worked to repeat the unfamiliar phrase. Gracias tibiago, then. He regarded the berries again. Where did you get these anyway? He asked, picking up one of the small berries between his claws and holding it up to the light.
There's a big bush growing nearby that's covered with them,
Thorax explained as he wandered over to where he had left his cloak when he woke up.
Not entirely sure what kind they are, but I can at least tell you they're safe enough to eat, as it's growing wild in an empty lot nearby. I figured no pony would mind if we helped ourselves.
Spike popped it into his mouth and bit into the chewy berry. He pulled a face at the taste of the juice that subsequently burst into his mouth. Kinda bitter, he noted aloud.
Sorry,
Thorax apologized as he gathered up the cloak.
But I figured it was better than nothing, and you need to keep fed as much as I do.
He noticed that Spike opted not to eat more of them, however, and instead stuffed the cloth and berries into the saddlebags lying next to him. Thorax gave the dragon a look that said he didn't approve of that, but he chose not to make a verbal comment.
So, you got the list of things you want to get together?
Spike handed over the list to Thorax, who looked it over. He said aloud and began to read it.
Food, non-perishable, water, blankets, backpack for you to help carry things in, a flashlight.
He trailed off as he nodded in approval.
This is actually a pretty reasonable list.
The question I'm worried about is how much of it we'll be able to get, Spike said aloud. Thorax had the same concern.
I found that Vancouver's marketplace has all of these things. There's even a discount shop that stocks everything half price. But the problem is that, in order to get these things from these shops,
we'll need money that we don't have, Spike summarized, nodding his head with a sigh.
Assuming that's the route we choose to go, of course,
Thorax reasoned, vaguely. Spike caught what he was suggesting, though, and winced. I'd better not have to resort to stealing anything, he stated. Fortunately, Thorax was of a similar mind.
Agreed. Not only would we risk getting caught, it'd leave a trail that anybody pursuing us could follow.
Not to mention that it'll get us into more trouble than we're already in, Spike added. And frankly, becoming an outcast was bad enough. He sighed, massaging his forehead with his claws. Could we at least get food we could travel with?
I did search, Thorax said, but the only place I could find where we could get reliable food without having to use money is this place where they're giving it out to ponies off the street. Some place called a soup kitchen?
I know what you're talking about, Spike said. And good to know that we have that as an option, but unfortunately, everything they serve there isn't going to be non-perishable.
Actually, I could work around that, as I could create a small cocoon we could keep it in that will keep it fresh, though it'll have to be kept in a bath of suspensive fluids to do so,
Thorax explained. But before Spike could object with any misgivings to that idea, and he had many, the changeling went on.
No, the problem is that I noticed when they permitted ponies inside, they also worked to collect information to identify them in the populace records. Something about wanting to use it to help the ponies turn their lives around, from what I heard. Anyway, if we get in, we would need to provide something similar. And considering that we're technically banished, that would only get us caught.
Spike nodded in agreement. I don't think a soup kitchen is going to let us take a couple of days' worth of food off of them anyway, he said. He sighed once more. But that doesn't leave us with many options, does it?
It would appear the only way out is to find some way to obtain some money,
Thorax deduced, logically. Spike nodded. We're going to have to get jobs.
Jobs?
Probably nothing complex, just something part-time and out of the way long enough to get us enough bits to move on to our next destination. Spike looked at the changeling. By any chance, did you see any places that are advertising that they're hiring? Thorax shrugged.
I wasn't looking, he admitted. I did not know I needed to.
He tilted his head at Spike.
You can do that in Equestria, though?
You can just go and ask for anyone you like? Spike grinned, amused. It's not quite that simple, but it's something like that. Do changelings not do that?
Not really. It was more the Queen determined what she deemed we were the best or most useful at, and then assigned us to do that job until such a time we either could no longer do it, or when she told us to do another job. She does all the job assigning herself, not the individual changelings.
Well, in Equestria, finding a job is up to the pony, or in this case, dragon and changeling. It's up to them to find it on their own time, and later advertise to the pony looking to hire that they have the skills needed for the job, in hopes the employer agrees and hires them over another. It's called job hunting. Thorax considered all of this for a moment.
Then I guess we're going job hunting,